Islam Makhachev is already a UFC champion, a former lightweight king, and one of the most dominant fighters of his generation. But at UFC 330, he isn't simply defending his welterweight championship against Ian Machado Gary. He's fighting for a place in UFC history. Makhachev currently sits at 16 consecutive UFC victories, tied with Anderson Silva for the longest winning streak in UFC history. One more victory would give him 17, and the record all to himself. Hello, this is licensed professional counselor Robert Bryan, and welcome to Faith Meets Psychology. First, let's discuss the psychology of control. What makes Makhachev so fascinating psychologically is how much of his fighting style revolves around control. He doesn't appear to need chaos. He doesn't need to constantly prove that he's the most dangerous man in the room. His approach is methodical. Close the distance, impose his game plan, eliminate his opponent's options, and stay composed at all times. That physical style reflects something deeper about elite performance. The ability to remain patient while someone is actively trying to hurt you requires extraordinary emotional regulation. Makhachev's success isn't just about strength or technique, it's about repeatedly making disciplined decisions while operating under extreme pressure. And that's super important because championship level fighting isn't simply about who has the most talent. It's about who can maintain access to that talent when adrenaline, fatigue, fear, and uncertainty enter the equation. Now let's talk about the Khabib legacy. Makhachev's psychology also can't be separated from the influence of Khabib Nurmagomedov and the Dagestani fighting system that helped shape him. Makhachev has spent years training alongside Khabib, and their relationship has created a culture built around discipline, preparation, humility, and relentless improvement. The hard work that they put in is insane. But there's an interesting psychological challenge that comes with following a legendary predecessor. You don't simply want to be remembered as Khabib's student, you want to establish your own identity. And Makhachev has done exactly that. He became the UFC lightweight champion, defended that title multiple times, moved up to welterweight, and captured a second UFC championship by defeating Jack Della Maddalena at UFC 322. That victory also brought him level to level with Anderson Silva's record of 16 consecutive UFC wins. So Saturday isn't about proving that he can become great. He's already proven that. It's about determining how far that greatness can go. Now let's talk about the mindset of a record chaser. Here's where the psychology becomes particularly interesting. Records can be motivating, but they can also become distractions. When an athlete is one victory away from history, there's a temptation to think beyond the immediate task. Anderson Silva, 17 wins, the record, the legacy, the GOAT conversation. But elite performers often operate best when they narrow their attention. Instead of thinking, I need to break Anderson Silva's record, the healthiest performance mindset is closer to, I need to win this round, then the next round, then the next round, then this exchange, then that exchange. The record is the destination, but it can't be the thing controlling every decision. And Makhachev has recently made it clear that continuing to accumulate victories and accolades is a major motivation for him. The UFC itself has highlighted that his focus remains on adding to his legacy. Now let's talk about the pressure of being the favorite. There's another psychological factor that often gets overlooked. Makhachev isn't entering this fight as the underdog trying to shock the world. He's the champion. He's the established superstar. He's the fighter many people expect to win. And that creates a different kind of pressure. When you're the underdog, losing can be explained away. You aren't supposed to win anyway. However, when you're the champion, losing means something different psychologically. Suddenly, everyone wants to know what went wrong. That's why champions have to develop something called emotional neutrality. You can't become too excited when you're winning. You can't become too discouraged when something goes wrong. You have to stay psychologically even-keeled. And that's one of the qualities that Makhachev has demonstrated throughout his championship career. The ability to make a fight feel almost routine, even when the stakes are enormous. Now let's talk about the Ian Gary challenge, because Saturday presents a fascinating psychological matchup, because Ian Gary brings a very different style and a very different personality into the octagon. Gary is younger, ambitious, outspoken, and entering his first UFC championship fight. He spent years dealing with criticism and proving himself against increasingly difficult competition. Makhachev, meanwhile, has already experienced the highest level of the sport. That creates a classic psychological contrast. One fighter is trying to take the throne, the other is trying to protect a legacy. But there's a danger for Makhachev if he allows the historical significance of the fight to become bigger than the fight itself. Because Gary doesn't care about Anderson Silva's record. He doesn't care about Makhachev's legacy. He cares about winning the championship for the first time in his life. And let's talk about the ultimate test of mental discipline. Because that's why Makhachev's greatest psychological weapon may ultimately be his ability to simplify everything. Forget the record. Forget the legacy. Forget the critics. Forget the undefeated streak. Forget what people will say afterward. There's just one opponent, one game plan, one fight, one opportunity. That ability to reduce an enormous moment into a series of manageable tasks is one of the defining characteristics of elite performers. And if Makhachev can do that at UFC 330, he has an opportunity to accomplish something that nobody in UFC history has done before. 17 consecutive UFC victories, a second successful defense of his welterweight championship, and sole possession of the longest winning streak in UFC history. In conclusion, perhaps the most fascinating part of Islam Makhachev's psychology is that he doesn't seem to need UFC 330 to prove that he's great. He's already built the resume, he's already won championships, he's already defeated elite competition, he's already tied Anderson Silva. Now, he has the opportunity to separate himself. And that's a very different psychological position from someone desperately chasing validation. Makhachev isn't trying to become Islam Makhachev anymore. He's trying to determine how his legacy will ultimately be remembered. At UFC 330 in Philadelphia, one victory could transform a historic winning streak into the longest winning streak in UFC history. And the question isn't simply whether Islam Makhachev has the physical ability to make history. It's whether he can maintain the same calm, disciplined, almost ruthless psychological control that brought him this far. Because sometimes the hardest part of making history isn't reaching the moment. It's staying composed when you realize just how important the moment really is. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. I look forward to seeing you in my next video. Thank you.